All right, welcome back everyone to the Cannabis 360 conference. I'm excited to be here with you guys to talk about cannabis retail. And we're here with Ryan Roach from Lake City Cannabis. Super excited to have Ryan here with us. Ryan is just a fountain of knowledge and wisdom when it comes to the cannabis retail space. He's always sharing, amazing tips and tricks. Highly recommend. I always say every time I'm doing the cannabis retail course, I give a shout out to Ryan when we're talking about the social media side of things, and encouraging students to go follow Lake City because of just all the great content they're putting out there, but also to just the gems that he's constantly sharing with the community. So, yeah, Ryan, thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. I really appreciate you guys having me here. It's always, a real privilege to just be able to, first of all, sit and talk to you and wax about cannabis retail and all of the minutiae around that. And it's also really nice to just kind of share my thoughts. And I always like to hear the sound of my own voice, so that's always a good opportunity too. So, but as you alluded to, maybe I'll just pop into my intro.
Yeah. Give us a little background on yourself and Lake City, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So again, yeah, my name is Ryan Roach. I'm the co-owner of Lake City Cannabis. I own it as well with my wife, who if you follow our social media, she pops in and out of. And we started. We were let's just say we were maybe the second wave of approved licenses in Alberta. We got caught in the initial moratorium, as did hundreds and hundreds of other people. But we made it through early summer of that year, and we've had some great success. So our location is Chestermere, which if you're not familiar with Chestermere, it's literally walking distance from Calgary, and we are located right directly on a lake, that's for 3 months out of the year during the summer is filled and is full of fishing and activities and boats and all that's going on. We're probably the only dispensary who has access via seaplane and has been accessed via seaplane. We've had people stop by who flew in. It's not a very big lake, so I'm making it sound bigger than it is. It is really isn't. And then the rest of the year, lots of winter activities, snowmobiling and ice fishing and all that. So it's a beautiful little community, and it's mostly a community as well into Calgary. But yeah, we've been super successful out here, and we were lucky enough to find a tremendously good location in the southwest of Calgary, right next to Mount Royal University, which we opened up in May of this year. And I've already started the same excellent work we do there, and we're super excited for all the potential that has, being next to the university. So yeah, and of course, obviously, just a bit of a passion for retail and cannabis marketing and all that, and we'll get into that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and congrats on your second location as well. Was super excited to hear that. So yeah, Ryan has tons of knowledge on the Alberta market. Myself, I'm program advisor at AEPS for the cannabis program that we have here, and then I also do consulting on the retail side of things, primarily on kind of the license application process itself and helping get stores, up and running here in Ontario. So, hopefully we can, maybe cover both of those markets a little bit. But you mentioned the moratorium that you got caught in, and Ontario, we had a similar rocky road to licensing. To do a little Dropkick Murphy's quote there, but yeah, it's been interesting over the last, like, I would say kind of 6-7 months. I think things have definitely normalized a little bit in terms of the licensing application process, and we really are starting to see quite a few stores opening up, particularly in Toronto, at least here. And Alberta has kind of been ahead of the game a little bit. I think they're kind of in a way the canary in the coal mine for a lot of cannabis retailers. In a way, what happens in Alberta kind of tends to trickle over eventually into Ontario. So, I'm sure you guys, we started hearing about kind of Alberta reaching, a saturation point in stores, and we're starting to hear a lot about that now. And when I'm talking to clients and stuff, they're like, is it worth opening up a store right now? So yeah, I'm curious, and I know you kind of shared some of your opinions on this in the past, but what are your thoughts on this idea of oversaturation in
Sure.
the cannabis retail market?
Yeah, and I hold sort of an unpopular opinion on this in that I don't really believe that there's a true level of saturation that's in the market. Now, there's geographical saturations that are occurring, and that's just kind of part of the game. It does occur where geographically, a couple street corners or a street or an area may have oversaturation. Maybe that's due to popularity, that's due to where it's at or what sort of street or walk-up traffic could be there. Maybe it's popular, so you might see those oversaturation points. And in Calgary, in Alberta here, there's definitely some really great examples of that. But I don't really believe there's a true level of market saturation yet. And the reason I don't believe that is I think there's a lot of early operators who came into the game that are still hanging around, that are doing well, that are not here for the right reasons, or that are potentially doing a poor job. So a lot of people felt early days that this was a cash cow sort of situation. They could come in, they could make a ton of money, they could do their thing, and pull the parachute and be gone. And those days are gone. If you haven't pulled your parachute yet, they're dwindling down pretty good, unless you have something really nice to offer. So, there isn't a cash cow. It's like any other business. You got to go to work. I'm working 6, 7 days a week, and that's not just me trying to like advocate hustle porn. That's just the life of an entrepreneur, right? If I'm not in the store selling, I'm working on marketing. I'm working with our leadership team on what they're doing. I'm individually working with bud tenders to train them up and make sure that they're the most educated possible. We're working on all sorts of initiatives. So, it's work. Like, you don't just get to sit back. And if you want to run a successful dispensary, you should be involved, and you should be on the ground floor. And the blunt truth is just most operations just really aren't, especially. And I don't, I like to dunk on our large corporate retail partners and trash talk them, but the truth is there's plenty of independents who just aren't really checked in, and they're lazy operators, and they're asleep at the wheel, and that's just plain and simple. And there's also a lot of people that got in this because they really have a passion for weed, which is fantastic. And if you want to be into this and you want to run a successful dispensary, you either need to have a passion for cannabis or you need to hire someone who does. Plain and simple, full stop on that one. But it's not just that. It's not enough, because at the end of the day, you still have to have some business acumen, because your passion for cannabis can also give you hubris for your decisions. And it's a complicated customer base. It's a very heavy customer service industry, and if you're not prepared to have both your business acumen in check and your passion in check, it's a tough road. So I don't really believe that there's a level of saturation yet. I think we've only just begun. I think there's a lot of movement to still happen. I think there's a lot of space for people who want to come in and be very strong competitors and do the best things. So yeah, I really think that we haven't reached that saturation point yet of fantastic operators, because I think there's just wildly accessible amounts of opportunity for those who are ready to come in and kill it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, a really great point there. I mean, just in terms of being involved in the business, right? And I've seen it on the consulting side as well, where it's very much, a pretty hands-off approach, and that's definitely really not a recipe for success, clearly. And so, yeah, it's good to hear that there are still some opportunities out there. I think, like you said, though, you touched on it as well. There probably are these kind of little pockets or streets and stuff like that where it's just 4 stores across from each other, right? And there might be an issue there, but in kind of like the grand scheme, at least I think in Ontario, there's still a lot of places that are underserved right now, right? So
And I like to establish that sometimes too, is like, I think it's I think there's this ideal of and I don't want to say it specific. There's this ideal of it's sexy to be on like a cool street or in a really neat neighborhood or whatever. It's sexy, it's interesting. You get like a lot of that traffic, but I mean, the truth is your rent is really expensive. You're probably often have this geographical density of a bunch of other dispensaries, and it's really irrelevant. I mean, a lot of people just don't want to play inside the dirt of some of the rougher locations, some of the places where there's just an immense amount of opportunity to really serve your community with a great business. So.
And to kind of like piggyback off of that in terms of the amount of stores that are popping up, and we're starting to see some of these kind of value, low cost branded stores starting to emerge, which I know when I'm teaching the retail class, like a race to the bottom, price wise is never really kind of the right business model or plan. But what impact does this have, not just on retailers, but I know you have some thoughts about like how this impacts growers as well, and kind of the cultivation side, and it really does kind of have a trickle down effect, I guess, across the supply chain. So, yeah, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, and I'm really hopeful that we're getting this out of the way. I'm really hopeful that early on in the industry, we decided that we're going to attack this value thing a little bit and go that we're going to race to the bottom and get there and go, wow, this sucks. And I think we might be there as the industry is fluctuating. Absolutely, there's a lot of value-based retail brands that are popping up that are running absurd margins, taking an L almost positively as their quarterly final or their quarterly financials will show. And it's just not financially sustainable. And already most of them are shifting their strategies back out of it again because it's just complete nonsense. And it actually, if you understand the cannabis consumer, if you understand retail psychology, if you understand why people choose the things that they choose along with their days, and really in this complicated world that we're sitting in here, COVID, working from home, there's a lot of other factors that play a part too that are separate, but it's not good for anybody. It's not good for retailers as a whole. It's not good and healthy for the industry. It's not good for consumers, as much as that sounds kind of counterintuitive. It's not good for growers. I mean, in the terms of consumers, it's not good for consumers because it actually gives kind of a false ideology and a false perspective on the value of things and what something might cost, right? So when you drive something to the bottom below what it actually costs, raising it back up and reaching that appropriate standard again, obviously is given a consumer a false equivalency of what is acceptable and what isn't. If you're selling cars for, $50, but they cost $10,000 to make, well, it's kind of a problem, right? So, and the consumer psychology sort of gets aligned with that sometimes. But for growers, it's really dangerous. And it worries me for the industry, for our growers, especially our small craft growers, because these sort of operations really lean on large relationships, especially with those who have financial backing to be able to support them. So there's no secret that there's deals that go on in back rooms where maybe there's marketing contracts or support contracts, or training contracts, whatever you want to call it, that support sort of financial gain in terms of loss in revenues and raising those or lowering those margins down. It's not sustainable, but only real big growers can do these types of things for longer periods. And even it's proven that even that isn't working very well for them. And it offers them really no value add backwards again. And it creates a problem for small growers and craft growers in this country to be able to access markets appropriately. And it's already very, very difficult for them to do so. And these types of things make it more difficult to do so. When large brands who have a good footprint, who we do need large retail brands to be out there, but they have this large, very footprint. And if they decide, well, I'm just not going to carry X product, across 30 plus stores, I mean, that's really impactful to a small grower who has an opportunity to provide a fantastic product. And and we need our regulators to step in on that. But it's not good for the industry. But in terms of retail taking a stand on it and making sure it's there, it's about, getting out early first and making sure you're doing all the right things. Your customer service is on point. Your education is fantastic. You're providing value back to the customer. We worry a lot about, is this a value add to the customer? Like, are we making money, but are we providing value in our services here, and what are they getting out of it? And that's really important. And it's back to that business acumen versus passion. You have to balance both of those needs, right? So it's a tough part of the industry, and I'm hoping even on the grower side, we've maybe seen the light at the end of the tunnel where we're going to start focusing on value over dollar figure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's I completely concur on all of that, and I think it's an interesting development, but hopefully, I think you're right. Something that we kind of maybe squash out earlier on, right, and address earlier on, before it really takes off. And I think you're right. It sets that kind of false expectation that isn't realistic and sustainable long term at the end of the day, right? And
Yeah.
I think you mentioned kind of what the strategy really is at the end of the day is like keep it low and then hike it back up, once maybe the competition dies out, right? So it's yeah, not really playing fair at the end of the day, as you know.
It's just not good for anybody, and it's not. I mean, when you're really obvious about it, and you put it in your slide decks about how you're trying to kill off competition, labeled as the unregulated market, which is ridiculous in its own sense, anyways. It's just not good for you. It's not good for the industry, and it's not a sustainable model. It's never going to take anybody anywhere, and it's only going to piss your customers off at the end of the day. But we're watching competitors, and we keep track of things really closely about who's doing what. We're already seeing, large price ranges, and then we're starting to see these like really small price rates, like 2%, and then another 2% maybe a week or 2 weeks away, and then another 2% a week or 2 weeks away. And it's people not trying to piss off their customers by slowly trying to confuse them, which is silly, but we're getting there. I think we're on the right path, hopefully, to start talking about quality. I think customers are asking for it. They're yes, they can get it cheap, but then they're like, man, it's just not very good. And it's like, yeah, it's not. So let's
Yeah.
look at something else, right?
That's what I wanted to touch on, because you mentioned passion for cannabis. I mean, every time I'm teaching the retail class, like I really like try to wax poetic about my love for cannabis, right? And I think it's just such a huge component of it, especially like on the retail side. I think it like some people ask like, can I work in the cannabis industry without consuming cannabis? I'm like, yeah, maybe you can go be a QA. Like you could even work in a cultivation room potentially, right? But I think on that retail side, I mean, it does have those similarities to like a sommelier. And it's like, can you be a sommelier without drinking wine, right? Like the answer is pretty much, pretty obviously no. So, and a big part of legalization has been trying to stomp out the illicit market, as much as possible, at least. And we are starting to see like that transition starting to happen. Some of these, quote unquote legacy brands and stuff like that really making that transition to legal space, which gets me really excited about kind of the future of it. And so what is kind of the current state of the quality of cannabis in the legal market? I think I just saw something that you shared saying kind of it's pretty much the best it's ever been right now. So yeah, do you want to kind of talk about that? And even I saw you share something that's interesting, some that were like initially what we thought were the best producers in the game, they kind of fell off a little bit, and now they're kind of coming back with some fire potentially. So, how do you see that on your end?
I mean, yeah, I mean, one of my bartenders and I were chatting yesterday, and it's just, after opening, we open a lot of weed. So any chance we get to open up a package, we're cracking. But, we were saying to memory, I don't remember a specific time where there has been more quality cannabis on the market ever in the history of legalized retail or recreational cannabis. It's just unbelievable. And what we would have paid, back at the openings of legalization for some of the quality that we're seeing now, we're paying, almost half for. There's stuff that's out right now that would have cost $60 or more for an eighth of. That's $30 now, which is insane, absolutely insane in terms of quality that's come up. So it's getting better and better and better all the time, and we've seen just some amazing work. And even I like to use Broken Coast as examples. What you alluding to earlier was like Broken Coast used to be the designation of what quality was. It's how we were like, this is what quality is. This is what we know is good, and this is what the best of the best is. And they slipped, various issues, whatever, doesn't really matter. But for quite some time, I mean, Broken Coast has completely fallen off and been unable to, really be back to what that old school feel Broken Coast was, even back to the days of medical. and they're finally getting back to it again. They're finally getting back to it because a lot of I think folks even in large corporate stand of things have realized that you cannot squeeze, amazing cannabis through this small little accounting bubble, scale as fast as possible, make as much profit as possible whole. It just doesn't work. It's agriculture. It takes time. It takes detail. It takes work. It takes talent. So you can't just make it happen, and you can't just put something across someone's plate and be like, oh yeah, you're gonna love this. It's absolutely complete shit, and expect that they'll be excited to buy another one. It just doesn't work that way. So, the amount that's coming out right now is just outrageous, and the amount of there's a few different groups that are partnering and doing work with folks that are moving from an unregulated world, and now moving into a regulated world and providing some of that, skill sets that they've had for years and years and years. And, it's pumping into the market some of the best weed that's been out in a long time. It's just absolutely phenomenal. Some of the work is. So the industry in terms of quality has never been better. And, we still see a lot of these played out sort of narratives where, it's dry, it's bad, it's government, it's all just, to fill someone's, bubble of what they want to believe, but it's just not true. There is fantastic weed being grown by some amazing, amazing companies, and it's super, super exciting. Like, I can't name an industry that I've been in or been around where the evolution is like this constantly in terms of where the industry is going.
Yeah, it still seems like there's so much potential. I mean, just to give a shout out to one company that I was familiar with, kind of making that transition is Ghost Drops, right? They just signed like a deal with Mother Labs or something, and to bring kind of their genetics into the market. So, I think you're right. Like I've just been seeing it get better and better as well, and like in conjunction too with that price drop as well, which is really cool to see that those two things are kind of happening hand in hand. And yeah, I still think there's, that might be kind of a part of the initial problem of the cannabis industry. It's like they thought about maybe branding first before kind of what's in the jar, right? But I'm actually excited when we get to a point where like every time I pick up like a Death Brubba from a specific brand, like I know I'm getting that like gassy, skunky kind of like. And so I'm excited about that happening. I don't think we're quite there. I think it has to happen first, kind of what's in the jar, right? But I'm definitely seeing it as well, and seeing those improvements and seeing these companies transition. So I think you're right. It really is kind of moving up, and the sky is still the limit in terms of where it can go, right? So
Absolutely. There's only, we're only getting better. And for me, it's because we're so close to it. It's every week. Every time we open up delivery and there's a new box with some new stuff, it's really exciting.
yeah, I want to kind of walk me through that process because I find that so interesting. I tell clients that sometimes as well. It's like your order day is like your kind of menu selection, and like there's so much that goes behind like when you first get that new pack, right? That new drop. And you like, I think you kind of have an interesting process, and you're telling me you pretty much had to open like mostly everything, like 70-80% of it at least, and you're sharing it with your bud tenders and stuff like that. So yeah, do you want to just describe that process and why you
Yeah.
think that's important?
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the most, it's the part that bugs my accountant the most because we spend the most money on it. But it's probably the most critical point of our operation. So like our delivery days are R&D days, on top of that. So we're looking at what's coming in, what it's packaged like, what it's looking, what we're looking for. So we're opening up the large majority, probably 70-80%, like you said, of new stuff that's coming in because we want to see it. We want a firsthand look at it and what it's about, what's coming through, and how we can describe that to customers. And part of our process, and actually very little of it actually makes it home with me because a lot of it we share outwards to our bud tenders. We say, take this, go and check it out, review it, have a look and see what we go, because we go through it really seriously, even down to how we open things. We're very detailed in how we actually take a look at a product. When we open up a new jar of something, we don't just crack it open and go, oh wow. We crack it open, we don't look at it first, we smell it, then we do a visual, then we do a feel, then we do a crack, Then we let it oxygenate for a little bit to see if anything else opens up a little bit. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's temperature varied too. And then we do a grind and smell from the grind and open it up, and then we get a whole perspective from there. So it's very detailed in what we do, but allowing our bud tenders to experience this and putting weed in front of them that I'd like to say it's a high paying job. Like, we do our best. One of our focuses is making sure that, one, we're giving our bud tenders full time, and two, they have benefits, so they're getting all the benefits of employment. But it's hard to access all this, so we like to make sure that they have that, and they have the ability to test it. So, but it gives make sure that they have that experience backwards to the customer, and they can tell a customer, yes, I've smoked this. Yes, our other bud tenders had this. This is what we thought of it. This is what it looked like. This is what it smelled like. This is what it tasted like. Is unbelievably critically important, because, like, as you said earlier, it's not just a real passive industry. You can't just, pop someone in and be like, here you go. Well, just, if they ask for this, just put it on the counter. It's just not, doesn't work that way. Customers want to know what we think. They want to know what's good. They want to know if it's there. And so we build that trust backwards by making sure our bud tenders are wildly educated on the products, that they have experience, that they know what it's like, that they've smoked it, smelled it, tasted it, obviously in a responsible manner. But going through that process is just super, super critically important to making sure that, we offer the best level of experience backwards, and customers can trust us. They know that we're going to tell them the truth, because, one of our main rules is, if a customer comes in, it's like, okay, well, can I have X product? If it's shit, we will tell them it's shit, and straight up. And they appreciate that honesty. Now, that doesn't help us turn units, and those units turn eventually, whatever way they want to do. If people want to pick it up and buy it, whatever. But if they want our opinion on it, we're going to tell them it's not good, or it is good, and that's what it is, because we need to make sure that's there. And that happens through by making sure that, we have access to the product, that we are taking the time and the money to spend on it, and making sure that, we know what we're talking about. We know what it's going to look like when they open that up.
Yeah, yeah. I think like a personalized recommendation like that is so critical, and having confidence, right? Like that they're making a good recommendation that they have experience with already. So yeah, that's interesting. Like, mentioning that as kind of a key component of like training, right, staff, and training them on product knowledge, and experience with the products that you're selling, right? But is there anything else you want to kind of add to kind of that training aspect? And what I'm thinking about here is like things like regulatory compliance, or just even kind of running a store, right? Like working in retail, managing the POS, managing the kind of inventory side, the federal and provincial reporting that needs to be done. So what do you find there when it comes to staff training? Do you find that that's a big gap that you still need to be kind of educating quite a bit on, and also focusing on that? Or does it get to a certain point where you've built up a solid team? A lot of this stuff, like once they're trained on it, like they're pretty much good to go. And regulatory compliance is not necessarily something you're thinking about it, right? But it's become kind of second nature at this point. I'm just curious, because I mean, we always hear like cannabis is like such a heavily regulated industry. I think that's maybe a little bit more true on the production side compared to the retail side. I also think sometimes we think we're like the only industry that is regulated, right? So yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Like, is that something too you do need to dedicate a lot of training to as well, and finding kind of that balance between the two?
Yeah, it's always super important. So it's an everyday process. So it just never stops for us. And what we've done for our side of things is we've created an open culture around regulations, where everybody's involved in what regulations are, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And we've created an open culture about calling that out and being a part of it one-to-one as colleagues. So, one of the best things we've ever done is making sure that we create this place where colleagues can call each other and be like, hey man, like, don't do that, or hey, did you know you can't do that, or this is not good, or that's not good. And that's because we want this place where we are following the regulations. We are making sure that we are providing a healthy product backwards. There's a lot of reasons why we have regulations, but it's constant training and constant engagement and constant reminders, where we want to be as involved as possible to make sure that our staff feel comfortable because they want to do a good job too. They don't want silly mistakes. They don't want their jobs being affected for nonsense. So we make sure we build a culture around that, so that there is, it's really, there's no additional errors that can pop up. It's making sure everybody gets ID'd. It's making sure that we're selling products properly. It's making sure we're not making claims. It's making sure that we do all the right things. Build a culture around that. It's got to be an everyday process. It's got to be something you're involved in as a team, and getting everybody from your smallest hour part-time person to understand what the repercussions of certain things are, and what's the best way to word things. I mean, in this industry, just your nomenclature and how you speak can get you in trouble. So understanding how to word things appropriately to get yourself out of sticky situations, because customers are going to continually put you in them. They're going to walk in, they're going to be like, hey, I have a bad back. What can I have for that? Well, we can't really talk about that. Yeah, I know, but what would you give me for my bad back? Well, so you have to figure out how to move them forward into the situation without having a conversation around, stuff that can get you in trouble. So it's an everyday process. It's figuring out how to word things, and it's building your team around that, especially your leadership team. And it's not through forced compliance. It's one of the things that I hate the most. Sometimes you get this ideology that leadership comes through forced compliance of, handing out shit left, right, and center, and writing people up and doing this thing. It just doesn't work that way. You should want people to want to do a good job, and people should want to do a good job for the business. And you do that by getting them to buy in first, and making sure that they're supporting the business because they love being there and they're bought into what the ideologies are.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and kind of having it as just as much as part of the culture, I guess, right? In terms of that, and it's interesting how you mentioned like the medical advice kind of caveat, right? And that's always like, people definitely complain a lot about that one, and it is just finding kind of those different. And I think it's interesting what you say. It's not just like using different words and nomenclature, but it's also like guiding that conversation in a different direction as much as you can, and also not getting like frustrated by that either, right? So yeah.
It's retail. If and I remind our bud tenders probably at least a couple times a month, hey man, like, this is what this game is. Like, don't get jaded. If the customers didn't need us here, you wouldn't have a job. So just keep in mind that you're here to serve them. This is the job. Why you're here. It's to answer stupid questions sometimes, and embrace the fact that we're educating people so that they don't have to ask these questions again, and so that they enjoy it just as much as we do. Right? We can share our passion with them, and hopefully they grab it as well.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I want to get to a few social media questions before we kind of end off here, but I did want to kind of touch on this too, because I don't think we've ever really chatted about it directly, but it's kind of this idea of almost like over educating, I guess, the customer, and kind of reading your audience. Like I used to, when I was working in the store, I used to remember that too. It's like, they may not want a whole diatribe on like why the indica sativa debate is a false dichotomy, So like, how do you find like managing that balance as well in that conversation, in terms of kind of over educating almost? Like, do you still find some of that terminology useful? Do you try to kind of go beyond that as much as you can? Is there a big part of kind of reading that audience and knowing who wants to hear it and who doesn't? Does it also depend to like how many people are in the store, right? Like at that time, like if the store is busy, it's like, now is not the time to be talking about Afghanica land races, right, or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts like when it comes to that? Because I feel like that's just like a debate that probably will never end, especially in like the retail space. But yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I think, yeah, and I mean, this has even been like a recent social media subject too, in terms of you have to stop this indica sativa debate. It's as simple as this. It's read the room, man. Like, not the large majority of customers just want to come in and buy their product and bounce. That's it. That's what they want to do, and it's our job to meet them there, and it's our job to figure it out. So we train our bud tenders on being like, hey, when they walk into the room, we even have like it's a simple. It's like, hey, can I help you find anything today? It allows that customer to absolutely say, no, I'm good. I'm just going to look through the menu, or yes, what can I do, like, and go through that. And we can judge based on them of how can we be involved in their purchasing and what can we provide them. Customers want to make it simple. They're not involved in the, is it indica, is it sativa? And I get, the wrongs and rights of that subject. But if we want people to be bought into what we're doing, if we want them to be there to enjoy their experience, we have to meet them at their level, and talking down to them, or blasting them with education that they didn't ask for when they just came in to buy an eighth ultra sour, it isn't doing anybody any favors, and it's not really educating that consumer anymore. And if you spend the time during your process and your relationship with those people, because inevitably you do if they're coming back and rebuying, you can take the long game of helping them learn better ways to buy. I have regulars that have been with me for over a year that we started off with them on, what's your highest THC? Indica, because I can't have sativa because sativa doesn't get me high, and I need high THC, which is a ridiculous comment. But it doesn't matter, because what we need to do for them is earn their trust first and allow them to experience new things, recommend stuff, put things in front of them, and then have bigger conversations around why they had that experience versus this experience that they thought they would have. Nowadays, getting something over 22% is not difficult. Like, you can find it. It's getting something of quality over 22%. That's where we start tightening the screws up a little bit. So, spending time and meeting them at a place where they want to be educated and allowing them to enter as they need, reading the room, understanding what you need from it then, is wildly important. And, so because we want to build that healthy relationship with customers where they trust your bud tenders and they trust what you get. If you just want to spend time, giving them shit because they're saying strain instead of cultivar, then, it's going to be, you're going to continually grind against, a chalkboard in terms of what you're able to access for people, and they're just not going to come back anymore. It's an exhausting experience. They've worked their whole day. They just want to come in, buy an eighth, bounce, head home, play some games, hang out with their friends and loved ones. Like, is that a sin? So making sure that they have the right things is probably more important, and taking the time to understand them first, when you're talking to them is super, super key.
Yeah, no, very well said. All right, let's jump into the marketing side. Like I kind of kicked it off here. I really do think you have, in my opinion, the most interesting kind of social media, at least that I know about or see in the retail space, right? And I think you've taken a very deliberate, like, organic approach to that. Like I don't get like a corporate vibe from your channels at all, and that's part of why I love it so much. And I saw the one you did yesterday. I think it was yesterday, where you're doing like the Debbie, like
Yeah.
that was awesome. Shout out to 6 Plus, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, so on that kind of social media marketing side of things, like just what has been like a surprising kind of outcome of that approach for you? I see that you're getting like your team involved as well, which I find is really interesting. So tell me a little bit about that, and then also kind of, I guess, on the negative side of it, like there's still some of these platforms aren't necessarily receptive to cannabis content, right? So kind of on that flip side of it, what are some of those challenges that you're seeing? And I guess any advice for someone who's starting a social media account, but also maybe to getting them taken down as well.
Yeah. On the marketing campaigns, seeing very firsthand the engagement with your content, sometimes within minutes to hours, is sort of one of those things that surprised me the most, is being able to put something out in the universe and having people sort of ingest it and then bring it back to you and be like, hey, I saw on social media you were talking about this. What's going on with that? I want to know more. Which is always just very, that's the idea, right? That's the entire idea of marketing. That's the entire platform. But seeing it firsthand and the power of it is really interesting. And I think it speaks volumes to what needs to be done for an effective marketing strategy. And this is a tough industry to market in. So you have to think way outside the box. And I think there's a lot of big houses and shops that, they're trying to create their like innocuous marketing poster, that your marketing student from Ryerson graduated, They did up their graphics poster and they use enough white space and they think it's great. And it's boring as shit, man. And it's just white noise to the consumer, right? They're like, whatever, they don't care, doesn't matter. And we just really haven't taken that approach. And we've taken more of an approach of education and value through marketing. So allowing us to show people products, talk about why they're good, or talk about why they would choose this product over this product, or why this is a better way over this way, and providing them a value-based educational experience through marketing before we start doing any hard sell, soft sell sort of things where we're trying to push them product. And so that they, one, come back for more education. They come back to learn more about what we have, and it allows them to access more product. Now, from a marketing standpoint, it's fantastic because they just come in and buy product, or it's a really quick way to turn product and move product and get something in people's hands because they go, yes, that's the one I want. Boom, ordered online, ship pops through. So, it's a really good way to access people and show them interesting products without slamming them or just putting up innocuous sort of marketing material that just, flying, bud and something goes this way and there's some cool font with shadow text. It just doesn't work very well, and it's super, super passive marketing. So we've learned that education value proposition is key, and it's one of the things that we interconnective all through our platforms that we use. So it's super important. The other one, I'm going to bounce around on a couple things, but the other one is making sure that we are completely spread across as many marketing platforms as possible. And some people, I don't want to touch Facebook. Well, there's a fantastic demographic that's inside Facebook. And whether you like Facebook or not, there's an older age bracket that's in Facebook that's really accessible, that's very curious and interested, and maybe even a little nervous still and apprehensive, and you can access them, whether it's CBD products or whatever, where it's a place for them to digest. But making sure you're spread across those different marketing platforms is super, super important to be able to make sure you're accessing the different demographics that are interested and choosing to set themselves in those places. It also, like you alluded to earlier, was protects you as a business. So, I have been taken down. I'm on my third now in terms of getting myself back in again, ban on Instagram. So I've been taken down 3 times. I'm still trying to get back an account for my Lincoln Park location as we speak. So, but if I put all my eggs inside an Instagram basket, that would be absolutely detrimental to my business and my marketing, like absolutely deadly. So, the fact that we don't just put all our eggs in that basket means that we can shift our content and our audience where we need them to go and say, yes, our Instagram got taken down, but we have our Facebook. Yes, we have our Snapchat. Yes, we have our TikTok. You can go in all these different places and jump around, and you can find our content. We've even created, our text platforms. We market using text messages and emails. So all of these are ways to access your customers effectively instead of putting all your eggs in a singular basket where that growth has been happening. Because eventually it's going to happen. You're going to get zapped. My Facebook page, I'd had for 4 years, it got taken down. It's done. I had to recreate the whole thing. So, it's inevitable in this industry that you will encounter marketing pitfalls where, you put a lot of time and effort into something and it gets killed off. I mean, it's just one of many, many stories throughout this entire country. So spreading yourself out and making sure that you have multiple platforms protects you from that, but it also allows you to access other demographics. And the key one that we've really been focusing on lately has been Snapchat. And I got to give really big props out to my good buddy Ryan in BC at Blue Water Cannabis, and because he had really flexed this over there, and I was skeptical, jumped into it, and it's been hugely successful using Snapchat because it relies on this really short demographic, or this really short geographic range, where you're accessing people that are within that 5 to 10 kilometer radius of your dispensary, which is massive. Like, for you to be able to access people in that short range is exactly what your business is built around. So simply just being on that service has been good. It's not business centric, like it doesn't feel like a traditional business centric model. It feels a little bit more personal side of things where you don't create a business page. It's just, a page that feels like a personal page. But once you get beyond that initial hurdle, which is really essentially just a mindset, you're able to access people, and the ability to get really quick one-on-one communication through there has just blown me away in terms of results, and what people can do to sort of get that. So, and it's really gritty content. Like the content is not fantastic. Like you do not have to spend, a good 30, 45 minutes to an hour or more creating this beautiful sort of content like I maybe do with my Instagram. You can just post a picture, put some text on it, put it on, you're good to go. And that's all the community out of that wants, right? So Snapchat is one of those really key ones that I recommend everybody kind of take another look at. And then one of the big ones we did that actually changed everything for us was getting our team involved. So, we were looking at other larger creators and what they've done and sort of their evolution of success. And one of the key things we noticed was, it starts maybe with one person or one group, and then very shortly thereafter, the people along within that organization start entering into the marketing of that. And it's opened up this whole demographic. So one of our bud tenders, Maddie, relatively new within the organization, but we said, just have fun with it. Do what you want to do. Obviously follow some rules. We give them guidelines of things can and cannot do. Back to what we talked about earlier. But, it's been great for her. And she's gotten a whole different demographic of people that I can't access, that aren't going to typically come to me. And it's opened up a whole new range for her, allows her to learn different things too and get different things. But it allows this whole new place where people can access us that wouldn't traditionally have done it before, and in a whole different way that maybe I wouldn't have done before. And it's opened up some different comfort levels for me too. So getting your team involved in the marketing platform, especially if you have a small team, is great because it can allow them. Not everybody's going to be into it. That's okay too. If they're not interested or they don't want to be on camera, or they don't, completely fine. But giving them the option of opening that up and having fun with it, and engaging your community differently is huge. And I recommend everybody take a look at what options you have to be able to take your bud tenders, take your staff, and bring them in and let them sort of embrace that marketing too, because it's massive in terms of the results that we've seen backwards.
Yeah, no, and it's like I think you really do have that perfect approach in terms of kind of that education and bringing value, right? Like, I mean, honestly, just after your post, I was like, oh, I want to go try that new Broken Coast, right? Like, I'm like, do they have it in? It's like it's kind of that one-to-one, or like you're always like, oh, we're delivery day, like like come on in, we got this, that sort of thing. So I think it creates that direct relationship, and so much more interesting, at least to me, than just kind of scrolling through an Instagram page and seeing like a photo shoot of like a vape that's on like a cool rock or something like that, or I don't know, right? Like it's just, I get nothing out of that. Like it's just completely bland and boring. And you mentioned Maddie too, and yeah, she's dropped some gems that I absolutely love. So definitely give a shout out to her for me if you see her.
I will. She'll really like that.
Cool. Well, that was great. I guess pretty much coming into our time right now, but just wanted to thank you again, Ryan, for sharing all of that. I think there was just some really important recommendations that you made there. Some great advice that hopefully people can take home with. Like I said, kind of at the start, definitely go check out Ryan and Lake City Canna, right, on Instagram, Lake City Canna.
At Lake City Canna, at Lake City Chestermere, at Lake City Lincoln Parks. There's a couple of different ones, but if you jump into our link tree, which you'll find in any one of those profiles, you'll find everything else to be able to access along the way.
Perfect. And I guess, yeah, any kind of closing remarks you want to give before we end off here?
Yeah, I mean, one, I really appreciate like the opportunity and the platform to just kind of like share my thoughts. So thank you again. It's always really cool. And then just for everybody, like I appreciate, one, obviously taking the time to listen to me. It means a lot to me if you've taken the time out to actually view us. So I really appreciate people doing that. And obviously, I'm one of the things I love to do is share and give thoughts and give feedback and see if we can help in any way possible. So my DMs are always open. It's really easy to just drop me a DM. I'm really bad in some ways for like emails because I get a lot of them. So the best way to get a hold of me is jump into my DMs, just send me a message and ask a question. Don't feel bad about it. Don't feel apprehensive. Just send it and I'm good to go. And yeah, like it's a beautiful industry to work in. It's an amazing space. It's ultra competitive, and if you don't have the competitive spirit, it's a tough place to be. But it's a place of some really amazing people and some amazing things going on. I'm just super excited for what the cannabis industry has going forward and what's possible as long as you're willing to put the work in and put the hustle in to drive results and do different things because there's an abundance of opportunity and there's a lot of people asleep at the wheel. So if you've got the drive and you want to make a go of it, you think you can, and you've got some crazy ideas, go for it. Just make it happen because it pays off as long as you're willing to be a little bit of as long as you're willing to be a little insane and go outside the box and try out new things.
Well, if that doesn't motivate you, right? I don't know what will. And yeah, Ryan, like I said, fantastic having you here. Really, really kind of cherish this opportunity to connect with you and to chat cannabis retail. Legit could do it all day. I need to come out to Chestermere and we need to hang out soon. But really, really appreciate it. Thanks again for sharing all of your knowledge. And yeah, have a great rest of your day. And we'll catch everyone in the Q&A afterwards. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone. See you soon.